Germany in the late 1930s. World War II had not yet begun, but already, in the vertical flight race, the German Reich was ahead. The Fokker-Gelles FW-61 held every world helicopter record. The test pilot, Hanne Reich, had shown the FW-61 to the German public. The rest of the world also watched. But when war broke out in 1939, information stopped. For American helicopter pioneers, there was only silence from Germany.
The first really successful flights were made around 1937 by Fokker in Germany. They were followed by other flights. However, during the recent years, we had no news from Germany, and we do not know of any further success of this outstanding pioneer designer.
But behind the silence, there had been further development, a great deal of it. One of the most successful German designers was Anton Flettner. In 1942, the Flettner Colibri became the world's first military helicopter. Only 22 were built for operation with the German Navy. They were used for reconnaissance, flying from platforms above the gun turrets of convoy escort ships. They had a reputation as hardy, reliable, and practical machines. The Fokker-Gelles 223 Drache, or Dragon, used the same side-by-side layout as the record-breaking FA-61. It made its first flight in August 1940. It was much larger than the FA-61 and was capable of lifting 2,000 pounds. It had the amazing maximum speed for that time of 115 miles an hour. Some had a machine gun fitted for self-defense. It was used by the Luftwaffe for transport, supply, and reconnaissance. At the other end of the size spectrum was the unpowered Fokker-Gelles FA-330. It was a one-man automotive kite designed for towing behind U-boats for observation. A telephone line was embedded in the 500-foot towing cable for communication between pilot and U-boat. The Doppelhoff WN-342 was another small observation helicopter, the first to be powered by jets on the rotor blade tips. 4 prototypes were built, but it never entered production. Because of high fuel consumption in the tip jets, later versions only used them for takeoff and landing, and it flew as an autogyro in level flight. When the Allies entered Germany at the end of the war, they found among other helicopters 3 Flettner Colibris in perfect working order. One went to Russia, and the other 2 were taken back to the United States, where they went through a comprehensive test and evaluation program. This rare post-war American film shows the excellent stability and control characteristics that surprised American helicopter designers. But in the war years, the American helicopter industry had itself come of age. This is the Sikorsky XR-4. On May 6, 1943, it landed safely in a cleared space on the cargo deck of the tanker Bunker Hill. It was America's first helicopter shipboard landing. The XR-4 was not the military's first choice to launch the U.S. Army into the helicopter age. It had been rejected in favor of a helicopter rather like the German FA-61 in basic layout. The Platt-Lepage had side-by-side rotors and a fuselage like an airplane. But Igor Sikorsky was not a man to take rejection lying down.
Sikorsky Aircraft, which lost a design competition on paper, decided that now was the time to go ahead full steam with the concept of the helicopter. So largely with private financing, with the support of then United Aircraft, today it's United Technologies, the decision was made to build the helicopter independent of government orders.
The Platt-Lepage's similarity to the German FW-61 was not accidental. In the 1930s, W. Lawrence Lepage had visited Germany and been impressed by the German approach to rotorcraft design. The XR-1 made its first flight in May 1941. it was found to have a weak airframe, which slowed down the testing process. But in any case, it was never to become a satisfactory operational machine. The Army's original decision to choose the XR-1 had been based on caution.
And they proposed the same low-risk solution that had already been demonstrated in Germany, that is by Professor Fokker, the two rotors side by side. As a backup, that was the XR-1. Then the XR-2 and the XR-3 were autogyros, low-risk fallback decisions. And then as the VS-300 began to prove itself and began to demonstrate very desirable flying characteristics, a last contract for the XR-4 was let to Sikorsky Aircraft. Basically, at first, it was a contract to build a much larger two-seater version of the VS-300 machine. And that eventually evolved, however, into the XR-4.
The XR-4's delivery flight from Stratford, Connecticut to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, established an American helicopter distance record. When it was officially handed over to the Army on May 18, 1942, it was ready to go into service. Present at the handing over ceremony was one of America's greatest aviation pioneers, Orville Wright. In April 1944, a Sikorsky YR-4 rescued an American pilot and 3 British casualties from behind enemy lines in the Burmese jungle. They had to be taken out one at a time. It was one of the Sikorsky R-4's most remarkable actions of the war, and a pointer to the helicopter's future as an effective military tool. Even before World War II was over, people were thinking about the new life peacetime would bring. The idea of the family helicopter seemed a possibility. The man tipping the car park attendant in this promotional film is Sikorsky test pilot Les Morris, and the helicopter is the Sikorsky test bed, the VS-300. Boundless possibilities for future use of the helicopter were in Igor Sikorsky's mind almost before it was off the drawing board.
We can visualize the helicopter being used for carrying mail, passenger, freight. We can further expect its extensive use for all kinds of emergencies, such as forest control, health, medical assistance, and finally, we can expect its development for private use. One could hazard the prophecy that our ways of life would be changed just as they were when the automobile came into general use.
But the idea of rotorcraft for the average family was not new. In the mid-1930s, the Pitcairn Company had suggested the possibility that there could be an autogyro in every garage, even if the rotors might not quite fit through the garage door. Any autogyro could land, but only the Pitcairn AC-35 could land, have its rotors folded, and then drive away on a public road, just like an automobile. This wasn't a fantasy. The AC-35 was actually approved for road use. But the helicopter designers took the 1930s possibilities one step further. Frank Piasecki, in his first helicopter, the PV-2, promoted his product with the idea that you could land at the gas station and fill up if your tank was getting low. And if that didn't stretch your imagination, think of the reaction of other golfers when you casually landed on a golf course and left your brand new helicopter next to a green while you went off to shoot 18 holes. But when the war came to an end, it wasn't all sweetness and light in the helicopter industry.
You see, this was after the war, so there was just no military deep interest, no military programs. Where the nation was in a closed-down mode.
In the absence of orders from the military, Charles' command went out of his way to interest the general public in the helicopter. He staged regular demonstrations outside his factory, showing off the helicopter's bag of tricks to a willing audience.
We were going to build a helicopter for commercial use for every man to fly, because it would be that easy. And we had the vision that the sky would be black with them. Kids are entitled to dream. That moves the world. And we were kids dreaming.
These craft, designed for utility, are styled for comfort as well. This two-place model provides a roomy coupe-type cabin, soundproof to keep out engine noise. It has wide automobile-type doors and windows, and excellent views in all directions are provided by large areas of clear plastic.
If the kids were dreaming, so were the business executives. But there was more chance of the helicopter being adopted by corporate leaders than the average suburban household. Nevertheless, the American public was more than happy to watch the spectacular barnstorming publicity events staged all over the country by the energetic helicopter manufacturers. Indoor flights and 4th of July exhibitions attracted thousands of willing spectators who embraced this new phenomenon as a symbol of American ingenuity. Ingenuity that would take them into a new life after the trials of wartime were forgotten. The Bell Company staged these events, and Sikorsky did the same. And even the very small manufacturers tried to join the drive to capture the imagination of the ordinary American. Stanley Hiller Jr. was just 17 in 1942 when he started to build his first helicopter. By the time he was 19, it was finished, and he flew it for the first time in the University of California Stadium on May 14, 1944. Hiller's coaxial rotor system was extremely effective, giving stability and simplicity of operation. Hiller believed strongly in the idea of a helicopter in every garage and developed a number of other models, including one called the Commuter. Hiller also produced a conventional single-rotor helicopter using his rotormatic system for rotor stability. It also used an overhead lever control instead of the usual cyclic stick between the pilot's knees. This helicopter was to go into production as the immensely successful Hiller Model 360. At a time when families were looking to escape the city centers and settle in the space and peace of the countryside, the helicopter seemed to be the ideal daily commuter vehicle. The Kellett XR-8 was produced by the Kellett Autogyro Company. It was America's first helicopter to use the side-by-side intermeshing rotor system. But the dream of personal helicopter transport was never to become fact. Dr. Bob Rosen of NASA.
Kind of picture we all heard about from popular mechanics in the 40s and early 50s of everybody having one of these things in their garage and commuting to work is something that's not going to happen. And when I think of the difficulty of traffic patterns now and think about everybody commuting in a rotorcraft to work, I'll tell you, if there's one I'm not going to be